Welcome to Fix It Home Improvement, covering projects that every homeowner should know and great products for home and garden.
Hi, I'm JC, and this is where we share weekly home improvement tips. I'm here with my co-host, Cindy.
Hello, JC.
Hi, Cindy. Today we're going to be talking about traditional fireplace tips. We'd like to thank Anna Gray, who's been sharing and liking our podcast. So the first fireplaces in homes were actually set up in the center of the home or the center of a room, and they would have a hole in the ceiling to vent out the smoke.
So it's like a fire pit?
Yes, fire up the fire pit. The first chimneys weren't invented till around the 1100s, so 1100 AD. In 1678, Prince Rupert, who was a German soldier and a scientist, him and his dog, they were both accused of being witches because he was coming up with all these inventions. So they thought he was a witch. But he invented the fireplace grate to allow the wood to stand up off the ground so that air could circulate under it so you'd get a much better fire and less smoke.
Nice.
He invents the fireplace grate and gets accused of being a witch.
I bet indoor air quality used to be really bad.
Oh, yeah, terrible. Well, when we talked about, cleaning carpets and stuff, like the early colonists, there was so much soot that, you would take your area rugs out and just beat them, and it's just full. It's just terrible. In 1741, Benjamin Franklin developed a cast iron freestanding stove. They called it the Franklin stove. So it would
They
draw.
still do, don't they?
Yes. Well, what's wild is all of the versions after him. So it was actually a great idea. So he had kind of a duct system where he drew cool air from the bottom of the stove, and then he had a U-shaped duct so that there's more surface area and it's absorbing. It was cast iron, so it absorbed a lot more heat, and so it was radiating much more heat than a traditional fireplace, which is very bad. But all of the later versions were much superior and did a better job. But, he was so popular that the name Franklin stuck. Where a few of these guys,
So more of a marketing technique?
Yeah, absolutely. In the 1790s, Count Rumford developed the shallow and tall fireplace. So it reflected much more heat, and it drew the smoke and fumes up the chimney much faster, so you had much better air quality inside the house. And Thomas Jefferson just loved the design. He put it in all his homes. But he really didn't like the Count, because this guy was born Benjamin Thompson in Massachusetts in 1753, and then he moved to England in 1776 and joined the British Army.
Traitor.
So this week we'll focus on traditional fireplaces.
Is there another type?
So they've got a lot of really interesting new ones. Electric, they have non-vented logs, they have, a variety, which we'll have to cover in another episode. But with a traditional fireplace, so if you're moving into a home and you've never dealt with a fireplace, or you're thinking about a home with one, we'll just focus on some tips with a
They kind of scare me, like a fireplace.
Yeah, well, you're burning fire in the house.
Well, that, and then it's like big hole in your.
Absolutely, they're very inefficient. So they give estimates of 5% efficiency, 10% efficiency on some of these older fireplaces. So 90% of the heat that you're generating is shooting up the chimney, and then it's removing your conditioned air. So if you've got your damper open,
right?
If you're heating or cooling, all that conditioned air is going up the chimney. If you have a traditional fireplace and you don't have glass doors, just by adding glass fireplace doors, you can increase the efficiency by 20% in some styles. So that's kind of an easy fix.
Yeah.
You only want to burn seasoned wood.
What does that mean?
So this is wood that's dried out. So you want your wood to dry for 6 to 12 months.
Wow.
And when you're picking wood, you're looking for something with dark colored cracked ends. You can tell that a lot of the moisture has left this. If you split your wood, it's going to dry faster and it's going to burn better than whole logs. And if you're splitting your own wood, rather than a traditional axe, you should pick up a splitting maul. And so this has a special wedge-shaped head that's much easier to cut wood apart.
Well, it looks like an axe, though, right?
Yeah, it looks just like an axe, except it has a little different style. It's more of a wedge, because a traditional axe is going to get stuck, and it's going to get very irritating. And you're looking for around 6 pounds. That's the easiest for most people to use, and you can also generate a lot of speed. You're looking for hardwoods, if possible, like oak, ash, maple. They're dense. They create a lot of heat, rather than softwoods like pine and cedar. And another trick, when you're grabbing wood, let's say you run to the hardware store or wherever you get your wood, if you grab a couple pieces and knock them together, it should have like a sharp cracking sound, not a dull thud. And you never want anything that looks green because it has a lot of moisture in there. So green wood's not going to burn as well. It's going to create more soot and creosote. And creosote is what builds up over time inside the chimney, and that's what can cause a chimney fire. Mm-hmm. So it's all this moisture. It's part of unburned gases. It condenses. It forms almost like a tar-like coating. And when it ignites, it can explosively burn at around 2,000 degrees.
Wow.
So it can melt mortar. It can crack your tiles, your liner. It can catch the wood inside or anything adjoining on fire. Flames and sparks can shoot from the chimney. So
see, this is why fireplaces scare me.
People say that it sounds like a freight train when you have a chimney fire.
So what is the liner made out of?
So depending on a traditional fireplace, your liner is going to either be clay, ceramic, or metal in most cases. And then because of this creosote, you should definitely have your chimney inspected at least once a year, or most pros say after 80 fires by a professional chimney sweep.
So you should keep a board next to it?
Have a checklist. So after 80
I mean
fires...
like a tally board of like, that was one fire
right,
that
exactly.
we did. Or just once a year have somebody come out.
Absolutely. And the Chimney Safety Institute of America has a certification. So if you go to csia.org, and they have a very nice site. So they have continuing education for chimney sweeps on their site. They'll tell you what to look for, how to hire a chimney sweep, people that are certified. And they recommend an annual inspection to make sure that the chimney's clean. They're going to check for cracks, any damage, and any blockages in your chimney. According to the National Fire Protection Agency, there are about 25,000 chimney fires a year.
Wow. And
if you didn't know that you had a chimney fire, the liner could be cracked, so it's a potential for a fire. Cracked masonry can actually cause a blockage, and what happens is if the soot and smoke isn't flowing properly, it can force carbon monoxide into your house. And carbon monoxide kills about 300 people a year. So make sure that you have a CO detector on every level of the home. You want to replace them about once every 7 years, and keep your carbon monoxide detector about 15 feet from your fireplace. I would keep a non-flammable rug in front of the fireplace, and this is going to prevent damage to the floor or carpeting if you have it there.
So not a bearskin rug?
Yeah, I would say that's probably flammable.
Why do they always show those in front of fireplaces, like on TV and in pictures and
stuff?
Yeah,
where did that start?
Yeah.
I would have a fire screen or a glass enclosure. You can protect against sparks or logs rolling out of the fireplace.
That happens?
And yeah, absolutely, yeah, depending on how you stack it. In fact, doing a little bit of this research, it's amazing how important stacking your logs are, and also a fireplace grate that's going to hold it in place.
I'm never going to have a fireplace. Unless it's like electric.
Yeah. For fireplace glass, you want to make sure it's tempered. And what's interesting is they take chemicals and heat, and they treat the glass so that when it breaks, it shatters into small cubes that generally aren't sharp. With regular glass, it's just going to have jagged, sharp edges.
Right.
So, pretty cool. And to clean tempered glass, one of the best recommendations is using a half a cup of white vinegar in a gallon of warm water, and either spray this on or wipe it on. It helps remove soot, and then just rinse it clean. And you can use this on the fireplace screens too. You always want to open the damper before you start a fire.
What's a damper?
So this is this flap that closes above the fireplace opening. And once you open this allows the smoke and everything to rise. And when you close it, when you're not using your fireplace, you close this so that the weather from outside isn't coming in.
So is there like a lever or something?
Right. Yeah, there's a lever that you're going to move, and so you want to open this before you start your fire.
Would you know if it wasn't open?
Yeah, all the smoke's going to be pouring into your room. It's an easy indicator that the damper's not open. And a good routine, the first fire of every year, is to open that damper and with a really bright flashlight, look up inside the chimney just to make sure there's no blockages. You can have, birds, cats, bats, rats, leaves, all kinds of stuff in your chimney. And then you want to warm up the flue first. So to prevent downdrafts that can push smoke and toxins into the home, you're going to, before you start your fire, so you open the damper, and then a lot of people roll up a newspaper, they light the end of it, and they stick it up into the flue.
What's the flue?
The flue is the inside of the chimney that's going up and out of the house.
Okay.
And what you're going to do is you're just warming up the air inside your chimney or up inside the flue, or you can use a little bit of small kindling and start that in the fireplace just to warm up this air in there, and then you're going to build your fire, and this prevents downdrafts.
Okay.
Because that wood smoke contains such fine particles that it can really damage the lungs, and some of the chemicals are carcinogenic.
Right.
So the EPA says that wood smoke causes coughing, headaches, eye and throat irritation, people with asthma, even short-term exposure to wood smoke can be dangerous. And people with heart disease, the particles in the smoke can cause heart attacks. Amazing, huh?
That's crazy.
Now, to build your fire, I would use a fireplace grate, and a popular method is the inverted fire. So this is starting with your largest and thickest logs on the bottom, and then stacking slightly smaller, thinner logs on top of that. And then on the very top, you're putting your kindling. And then once the kindling starts to burn, those tiny flames, they don't have to pass through those thick, cold logs. So it's going to burn cleaner, and you don't have to tend to it as much.
Oh, that's nice.
If you're doing a traditional way, then normally you're going to put your kindling under it. You're going to space your logs on top, crisscrossed. And then that first layer, sometimes you're going to put on the top edge of the grate so it's above the kindling, and then it won't roll out of the fireplace.
What is kindling?
So this is really either very thin, tiny pieces of wood that easily catch on fire. A lot of people will use shredded newspaper or lint from the dryer because it's highly flammable. If you're going to the hardware store to pick up kindling, there's a couple top-rated companies. One is Fatwood, and this is made from pine tree stumps. They're thin sticks that you can use. Stump chunks, and I met the inventors at the last hardware show I went to. It's four brothers they're in New England, and they take tree stumps. So everything you see above ground and below ground, they shred this up. So it's 100% wood, no additives. And the tree stumps are a dense part of the tree, so it really burns hot and long. So it's kind of interesting. They shred this up and throw it in bags.
I don't think you've spelled today. You want to spell their name?
Sure. Stump Chunks. So it's STUMPCHUNKS.
Thank you.
And thank you. And then there's Fire Starter Nuggets, and this is made from recycled wood and paraffin wax, and they create little nuggets that light. And then you never want to use charcoal, gasoline, lighter fluid, any type of garbage as a starter. You want to use some type of kindling, something that's designed for it. And then you never want to mix real wood and manufactured logs. It can cause flare-ups.
Really?
So manufactured logs like Duraflame, they're made from sawdust, wax, and oil, and it's wild. So most manufacturers are only recommending that you burn one of these logs at a time. And then Duraflame just came up, and that's D-U-R-A, flame. And they just came up with a log called Stax, and that's S-T-A-X. And this is designed to use two logs, so it gives you more of a traditional look. And this will burn for 2 hours. But most manufacturers only recommend one of these manufactured logs.
If you're using regular wood, how many would you use?
So most pros recommend 3 logs with just a tree. So if you've split these up, you're going to have a lot of pieces, but 3 logs worth. And you really need to...
when you split the wood, are you splitting it in half or quarters? What?
Usually minimum quarters.
Okay.
And then sometimes more. When you're hitting it, it splits in. So it doesn't split real even when you're hitting this.
So if you have a wood pile, you're probably picking up 12 pieces then to put in your...
Right, exactly. And you really don't want to use too much more than that, because some chimneys are not rated for a really intense fire. And then you really need to kind of pay attention. You need to watch your fire till it's out. Because
it's fire?
Yeah, absolutely. And those coals can, 2-3 days, those coals are hot enough to start a fire if you lay something on there. Yeah, so depending on how much ash is in there. So it's really something you need to watch. And then you need to leave your damper open until all the ash is cool. If you close the damper too soon, carbon monoxide can build up in the house. And then even with some of the tips, even with your glass doors, it can take over 30 minutes for them to cool down. So you really have to be aware of pets and kids around a fire.
What sort of maintenance routine should you have?
So I'd say daily, if you're using your fireplace a lot, I would have an ash bucket and a shovel, and you want to keep those ashes about an inch deep. And you don't want to remove them all because that ash actually acts as an insulation and it helps reflect and retain some of the heat. And so if you have shovel and utensils, it's a great tip to clean them.
No.
You can get Worcestershire sauce and a toothbrush, and they say that it does an excellent job on fireplace tools. There you go.
Who figured that out?
Somebody from Worcestershire.
Mm-hmm.
You should always crack open a window and open the damper when you're cleaning ash, so any puffs of that dust is going to go up the chimney rather than into the room. And then always wear a dust mask. I would wear one that's rated NIOSHN 95.
What does that mean?
So it's for the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, and the N stands for it's not resistant to oil. And then the 95 says it's going to filter out 95% of the airborne particles, and that's kind of the minimum that most professionals recommend for using fine dust like this.
Right.
I would get something with 2 straps and a valve, and that's going to be the safest. I would never use a traditional vacuum because it's going to clog the filters immediately with these fine particles and potentially can damage your motor. You want to use something specifically for fireplaces, and you want to wait at least 12 hours. It's better if you wait longer because those ashes, and again, depending on how many coals you have in there, can stay hot for 24 hours or longer. And then one that we were trained on at the last hardware show is called the Bad Ash 3. And this has all these pre-filters and special paper filters. So it has this great big pad that stops all this fine particles first, and then it has a fire-resistant cage around the special filter.
Right.
They have a flexible metal hose, and it has a wand that's metal. So it's just specifically designed for this. So that's what you'd be doing daily if you're creating a lot of fires. And then weekly, you'd probably want to wipe down the glass if you have glass enclosure or your fireplace screen. And then once a year, you want to check your damper. It's not bad to keep that lubricated. And then hire a pro at least once a year that's going to clean and check your fireplace. Now, if you want to put out a fire or you want it to burn up quicker because you want to get ready and get to bed or you want to leave the home,
you just dump water on it?
You usually don't want to use water unless it's an emergency because it can create just a thick, terrible, sticky paste with that ash. It's really bad. And you want to...
Inside your home.
Right. So you can separate... So use your poker, separate the logs. It's going to encourage them to burn faster. And then you can use a shovel to pick up ash and pour it on the logs. That helps put it out. You can also pour sand over your wood, and that'll help put out the fire. Although now you've got more to clean next time you clean. One other thing I would make sure I have is a chimney cap on the top of the chimney. And so I would look for something with a cage, so a wire mesh cage. You can prevent birds and animals from getting into the chimney.
I would say that's important.
And then this cap is really going to reduce the amount of rain and weather that's entering, and especially if you're in an area that freezes in the winter. Before you run to the hardware store, you want to check the size and the shape. Most of these are going to be adjustable, so it's going to do a variety of sizes. And I would always spray those bolts. If you're tightening down with threaded rods, I would make sure that you spray them with a silicone to keep them from rusting as quickly.
Where should you stack your wood?
So I would say keep it off the ground. I think a good tip is using...
So like outside?
Yes, outside. You got it. I would use pallets to keep them off the ground. Also, the pallets allow air movement, so it's going to keep it dry, because we want that wood to dry out, and we don't want it on
for 6 to 12 months.
There you go. Plus, we don't want it on the ground. You're worried about insects, spiders, tarantulas, mice.
No.
You could also use 2x4s. If it were me, I'd probably throw down a little bed of stone first, and then put my 2x4s down, laid out parallel, probably about a foot apart, and then stack my wood on top of that. I would leave a few inches between rows of my firewood. You can use a crisscross pattern. Again, we're worried about airflow. You can build a shelter, like a lean-to above it, so you have kind of a roof, but
Right.
you want the front and the sides open. You never really want to tarp it completely because that'll hold the moisture in. It won't allow the wood to dry out. And then
Because you're concerned about mold too, right?
Absolutely, yeah. You can get firewood mold, Cindy. Yeah, so I would say if you're going to tarp it, if you're worried about, heavy rains or snow, just tarp the top, fold your tarp so it's just covering the top,
Right.
but you're leaving the sides open. And then I would always use some type of border control for insects around my wood. So Taro has a really nice waterproof one. Bear
Right.
Advanced has a really nice border control. And, you're going to just prevent a lot of things coming into the house.
So you're just shaking this around the
Yes,
piles,
around,
not like at the actual wood, of course.
Exactly. Yeah. You want no chemicals on the wood. And we don't want termites in our house. So
Yeah, we all know what that does.
You know what the Egyptians did in 1500 BC?
Wow, you haven't talked about the Egyptians in a long time.
They would use firewood ash, water, and combine it with animal fat to make some of the first soaps. And then
That doesn't sound clean.
Pliny the Elder. This is 1500 BC.
Yeah, but still, you're not...
Pliny the Elder, he wrote about using goat tallow and ash to make soap. And then the early Americans, they used ash to create a glaze for pottery.
Wow.
There you go, some history.
There's some great history. I don't think it was about a fireplace, but that's okay. Do you have anything else to add?
I would say the key thing is to make sure you're using seasoned dry wood. Have a professional chimney sweep come out once a year, and that way you're going to have a very safe fireplace. And then get some glass doors. You're going to boost that efficiency up to 20%.
Yeehaw. Let's wrap this up.
You can check out our book, Home Improvement Solutions, What Every Homeowner Should Know, on Amazon. And we're getting ready to send book 2 to the editor.
If you enjoyed book 1, please leave us a 5-star rating and review.
You can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review.
You can check out our home improvement videos on our YouTube channel, Fix It Home Improvement.
And you could subscribe to that as well.
If you'd like to email us, you can email us at fixitpodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you for listening.
Talk to you next week.